Michelle, you look different.
Well, you know. Sorry.
That's just Michelle impression. Welcome back. It's another episode of Into the Light with Ryan and Matt today. Matt?
Yeah.
Welcome back.
Yeah.
Matt was here for which episode? Oh, the Talking Poop episode.
Yes, the Talking Poop episode, which was great.
Yeah, which was actually called the Talking Shh episode. But we
censored.
We censored it. Yeah. We just went a little lighter with the title. But we got into a conversation.
The very end of it, we started talking
Yeah,
Nazis.
and we said we would get back to it. And Michelle is on the high seas.
She's in the Virgin Islands right now.
Is she really?
Yes, I asked her if she could go talk to the president of the Virgin Islands for us, but I don't think she got it.
So here we are. So the conversation we started was about Nazis.
Yes.
And you were kind of our resident Nazi expert.
Yeah, I guess you could call me that. I've actually been to a concentration camp before.
Have you really?
I was real little. I don't really remember much of it, but the reason this whole thing has kind of started was because I've always been interested in World War II stuff based off the fact that the first 3 years of my life, I actually lived in Germany.
Oh, okay.
I was born in Littleton, New Hampshire, and within a month and a half, I was on a plane.
Are you an Army boy?
I'm an Army boy, yes.
Okay.
I was living in Augsburg, Germany for the first 3 to 4 years of my life. Both my brother and sister were born in Germany. I'm the only one that was actually born in the continental United States. So, yeah.
So, okay. So this is relatively official then.
Oh, yeah. It's something that's been kind of pretty near and dear to my heart because when you're there in Germany, they don't talk about it.
Yeah, I wondered that.
I think it's legitimately like illegal not illegal to talk about, but Nazis, anything like that, like they will straight up throw you in jail for talking Nazi propaganda.
Will they
now.
really?
Yes,
Wow.
because they're rightfully ashamed of what happened.
Well, yeah,
you know?
a lot of countries made mistakes, but what's interesting is in America, you're kind of taught about slavery. Like no one wants to think about the fact that we had slaves and did all that stuff. And but you're also taught that in school, so
I believe they do teach what happened in school, but they do not identify it as necessarily German history.
Really,
it's Nazi history. They
Right.
don't.
That's a separate thing.
They do want to put it as a separate thing because
Right.
a lot of the misconception that a lot of people get is they think during World War II all of Germany was Nazis.
right,
No.
right.
There were quite a few people who absolutely disagreed with what was going on, but they also saw what was happening to the opponents of
Right.
what was going on.
Right.
So they weren't going to speak up because they would end up hanging from the end of a rope.
Now, I'm kind of ignorant when it comes to this. Is that what led to like the Berlin Wall and the creation of North and South Germany, or East and West Germany, I should say?
The outfall of World War II did. What led
Yeah.
to the construction of the Berlin Wall, which I actually have a piece of at my house.
Do you really?
Yes, I do. My parents
fantastic.
they were in Germany. We were stationed over there when the wall came down.
Wow.
So, yeah, my dad actually was there, got a piece of the wall. We have a piece of the Berlin Wall. at my
Wow.
house.
Here's what I know about that. So when I was a kid, before the wall came down, I can't think of the title of the movie. You probably know about it. People know about it, but it's the movie where like the family wants to escape, East Germany, and they build a hot air balloon.
Yes,
Remember
it would
that?
be.
And
They're
they-
escaping East Germany because how it was divided like really weird.
Yeah.
Like East Germany was the communist controlled side. West Germany was the free Germany, and yeah, they were trying to escape communist rule, even though it was in Germany. It was just real
so
weird.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah. So wow, I didn't know you started in Germany.
Yes,
this is official.
I started in Germany, and knowing, and it kind of grew from there. Like I had the piece of the Berlin Wall, and they had brought that up to me, and I wondered what that was all about. So they explained that, which led into the World War II stuff. Which, as a kid, there was actually, even in high school, there was this book that they had of World War II era propaganda cartoons, like the ones that they would put in like newspapers and stuff, and they would use for that. I was obsessed with that book. The art and telling of the war through just pictures and things like that is so interesting to see.
I've seen some of that, like the Donald Duck. Like
yes,
Nazi,
Donald Duck type stuff.
Yeah.
They had characters that you see today, like Mickey Mouse.
Right.
Captain America was made to fight the Nazis. Like that's how Captain America was born, was to fight Nazis.
One of my early entertainment Nazi Indiana Jones.
Yes, yes, yes.
And that was fascinating to me. The whole thing. I still love those movies.
Oh yeah, and it was getting into things like that, and then I started learning about the history of World War II, and I actually took a World War II class at Mansfield University while I was there. That was one of my history requirements that I could do and take, and I was absolutely, I'm all over that because I got a B at least in that because I know so much crap about it already. Nice. It was an easy B at least. And then I started getting into the real dark stuff.
Right. And that, okay, real quick, I'll interject as I take a sip of coffee. Shout out to our sponsor, Conspiracy Coffee.
Yes. Thank you so much.
It also, speaking of conspiracies, I think that's how we started talking about Nazis.
Yes.
How did we lead into that? Let's rewind to how we got here.
So I think we were talking about I forget how exactly it came up, but something about South America. It may have been when Michelle was talking about going on vacation, and we asked if she was going to Costa Rica or South America or something like that. And you made the comment of "Watch out for the Nazis," and she goes,
really?
"What are you talking about?"
Maybe.
And then it flipped my switch, and then it just started going off.
Yeah.
On some of the stuff, but not all
Well,
of
what's
the
interesting is that I studied a lot. I had a lot of theology classes in college that I took because it was interesting to me, like really strange stuff too. And it's weird where there's that part of you got the Nazi circle, then you've got the occult, and then theology, and it all kind of overlaps. So the Indiana Jones thing, with like the Ark of the Covenant and all that is I mean, while it's science fiction, it's still not that far from the truth. Right?
No, and that's what I think a lot of really cool storytelling comes from is that sliver of truth that they build off of, and then when you start to get into it and realize how much of it was true, it's not okay. Nazis existed, and the part that's made up is the occult part. No, the part that's made up is the extra stuff of them actually finding things.
Right.
As far as we are concerned, and as far as we know, that part is also made up. As far as the fascination with the occult, different things like that, past religion and all of that, absolutely the Nazis were into it because Hitler and the basis of Nazism was pretty much about bringing people back to the...
We just lost video. I don't know why we lost video.
Oh no, we lost video.
Continue. I'll try to fix the video. You
okay.
Continue.
Anyway, so it was about bringing them back to the Germanic tribes and the pure German thing, and the pure Germans worshipped multiple gods. They worshipped multiple, different. It wasn't a monotheistic thing. So, in trying to bring them back to the root of Germany, they would believe in those occult type things, which also a lot of people don't necessarily get. But in Christianity, there's very occult superpower type of things associated with that as well, too.
As far as basis in paganism and things like that.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of things that were...
I still don't fully understand, and I got distracted. I was trying to fix our camera. We lost video this episode. This is an audio episode from here on out.
Yeah.
But,
just a black screen with Hitler's face is going to be on YouTube for this.
There you go. And but so Hitler wanted the monotheistic view. He wanted he wanted the polytheistic, I guess you would call it, like the monotheism of the one God thing. He didn't necessarily 100% jive with that. Like he took those occult references and like that older style of like Greek gods who had a god for this, a god for that. They kind of believed in the ultra supernatural powers. I wonder how much of that was influenced by the fact that he was an artist or a failed artist or whatever you want to call it. But like, because they also looted, all the art and they.
Well, that's the thing. I think a lot of it was a bit of that being a more. He didn't come from like a monastery, a real Christian background or anything like that. He was very much an artistic person, and a lot of more art thinking people are the ones who do tend to question established religion, if you will, a lot more. They tend to kind of do that a bit more. Now, that's not to say that there aren't great artists that are very religious.
It goes the other way too, because a lot of scientists and things on the other side are also skeptics or atheists or whatever. But yeah, that's interesting. I don't know enough about him as a person to know like where this was all coming from.
I believe he was, to begin with, he wasn't even like German. He was Austrian.
Yeah.
So that kind of throws you for a loop. But when you when you get into it, the way that we say German and the way that we assume, well, because in the United States, to say that somebody's a United States citizen, I'm a proud member of the United States, I'm an American,
Right.
it means so many different things.
Right.
Because of the way that this country was built. In Germany, Germanic tribes, Germanic people were all over Europe.
Yeah.
During the Roman Empire, the Romans were fighting the Germanic tribes in France,
Sure.
just north of Italy. You know, even farther west towards Russia, or farther east rather, towards Russia and everything. They were Germanic tribes. So when he was talking about German supremacy, he was taking it in the sense of the tribes, not the German country, because
So
the
not
people
like
had
a
lost faith in the German country because of
Right.
the Kaiser and the failure of World War One.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So then going back to when Michelle was going on vacation, all that stuff. So we mentioned South America, and so there's this whole story, and I have read and seen some of this in documentaries where they think that the Nazis had gone on exploration towards the South Pole, towards Antarctica,
Oh, yeah.
all this stuff. And then there's this whole thing that, so we're all taught Hitler killed himself, but a lot of people think he faked it.
Oh,
Right?
yeah.
Right?
And the evidence, unfortunately, I don't think it's looked at hard enough now.
Right.
And we'll get into it a little later. I think a lot of that is because that was just the American frame of mind, to be totally
Right.
honest.
Well, I think it is a lot of times
But
just to accept.
the number one thing that points to the fact that you can't prove that he actually killed himself,
Yeah.
the skull that was in Russia for so long,
I
that
saw
was
that.
Hitler's skull. There's the bullet wound. This is his
Was
body.
not his
We
skull.
found it. Not only is it not his skull, it's not even a male skull. It's a female skull.
I saw that too. Yeah. And in the kind of the investigation, I saw this documentary, right? So, what it looked like in the final moments is he was in the bunker. And now this is a time where everybody had body doubles too. I mean,
Oh yeah, Winston Churchill had them.
did. Yeah.
FDR had a body double
Right.
as well. Like this wasn't like a Joseph Stalin had them.
Right.
If you were a major leader during World War
had
II,
body
you
doubles.
better have a body double because somebody was trying to assassinate. you.
Right.
Yeah.
And so they're in this bunker, and suddenly, they kind of lose track of where he is, and Eva Braun, and all of a sudden, like, they shot themselves in a bunker in the basement or something. And so they took the bodies outside real quick, threw them in a ditch, and burned them. Like, it was one of those really suspicious circumstances, I guess.
Oh yeah, no, it's one of those things where it's a story it has enough facts in it, if you will, that you can believe it if you want to believe it.
Right.
But if you are a skeptical person and you're somebody who's coming at it from a, wait a minute, let me examine this point of view,
Yeah.
there's so many holes in the story. So many holes of things that do not match up. And then I think what the issue is, so many people were unaware really of what happened after World War II because we went straight from fighting and defeating the Nazis. What a lot of people don't understand, they fell well before we dropped the atomic bomb on Japan. So we had already said, okay, Nazis aren't a problem anymore. We need to defeat Japan. So our attention had shifted to that.
Now, why had Japan? I don't know this either. Why had Japan, in this theater of war, this world? Why were they allies of the Nazis?
They kind of had a very similar view of what they wanted. They understood Hitler and the Germans, or the Nazis rather, because they were trying to build their empire in Europe. But it was at least the belief, which in practice it didn't really work out.
Yeah.
But it was at least the belief that Hitler only wanted the lands of the people that were Germanic.
Right.
So they wouldn't have attacked Asia. They wouldn't have gone into Asia. That left Japan that
With all
wanted to
the
create
rest.
their empire, their
Sure.
Asian empire that way, and into the Pacific and the southern areas and stuff like that.
So that reminds me of the book, The Man in the High Castle. Do you ever read that?
Yes, have you watched the TV show
I have not,
on Amazon?
I have not. I'm a big fan of Philip K. Dick, though.
I've watched the TV show, I've read the books. TV show is a little, I mean, like any other book, it's
all right.
it's touch and go compared to the book. Like the plot lines are different, so you could very well love the books, hate the show, or vice versa.
Right.
But
I think
the
he's
books
come
are
up,
better.
He's come up before when we were talking about androids and all that
yeah.
stuff too. But if you haven't read the book or seen the show, it's basically Philip K. Dick was a sci-fi writer. He was prolific, wrote a lot of stuff that maybe you don't even know, and so he wrote The Man in the High Castle, and it's basically about if the Nazis in Japan won World War II,
what would have happened to America?
Yeah, and basically, what was it like? The West Coast was run by Japan.
The West Coast divided by the Rockies.
Right.
The country would be divided by the Rockies. In the Rockies and in that area was actually like a neutral zone, if you will, because it was just kind of too hard to really take over those mountainous areas. Like that would be very
East
hard.
was run by
Nazis.
the Nazis.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a crazy, crazy story. But
what's really weird is when you look and see like how close. There were a lot of times where it was super close to that being our reality. Like the attack on Pearl Harbor, had they not, like, for whatever reason, they pulled back. They thought they had already crippled the United States fleet.
Yeah.
Had they stuck around and done more damage, we would have been in a lot more trouble than we were. They thought they had accomplished everything. They hadn't. There was like one oil field that was left that if they would have hit that, we would have been just donezo.
That's crazy.
But they got a little too cocky. And it seems like that's what the story of World War II was, honestly, was people getting just a little too cocky. They got a little too sure of themselves. And if they had just been like, no, I don't care, I'm not taking any chances with this, and followed through with everything, we could be living in a way different world than we are now.
That's insane. So back to South America.
Yes. We keep going into history and not talking conspiracy.
It's such a crazy story, though. So this is where the conspiracy started. So they had gone. Why had they gone on that exploration in the first place? They had gone towards Antarctica. They'd gone towards Argentina at the tip of South America.
Well, I believe it was, it's like any imperialistic country.
Just spreading out.
Just spreading out, looking for places, looking for resources.
Right.
South America at the time, and there's still very large places in South America right now that are extremely ripe with natural resources. Right. Trees, cutting down for lumber, for building, possibility of discovery of, metal ores. There was still the legend of El Dorado out there.
Sure.
There's a possibility that was part of what was fueling this as well. They thought they could actually find that city of gold with the occult belief and everything that was going on.
Right.
Worst case scenario, they've got a bunch of timber and natural resources and a lot of land where they could build strategic fortresses, bases to possibly, after they've wiped out the United Kingdom and England and Britain or whatever you want to call it, they would need somewhere to set up, because going across the Atlantic like that isn't,
they needed a pit
the
stop.
best. They wanted a pit stop. They wanted to set up a place where they could actually lead an attack.
So America. They went that way, and then because they had already been that way, all these extra theories start coming up. Like one of them is that after Hitler faked his suicide, that he headed to Argentina.
Yes.
With a bunch, and now correct me if I'm wrong, some Nazis did do that, didn't they?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's and that's what makes it
viable,
as much as I like to think, as much as people like to call it a conspiracy theory, I honestly think it's the more likely theory. It's the more likely outcome, because if you look at not only the fact that there are multiple documented cases of high-ranking Nazis making it to South America, living out their lives, passing away at an old age.
They've talked about it, right?
Well,
like
and there are still communities in South America, in the middle of South America, where you're thinking more, either native people or Spanish native, the people that had first settled that.
Yeah.
There are legit German towns.
That's crazy.
In the middle of South America, where it is, you're walking through the jungles of the Amazon and you come to this place and it looks exactly like a town you would see in, it's not Berlin size. Right. They're not huge sprawling cities, but a countryside in Germany. They look exactly like it.
I gotta look this up. I just gotta look up a picture of like.
And it's pretty. It's what's so unnerving about it, and if you really think about it, is people were so quick to accept that Hitler had been killed.
Oh, there you go. There's a picture right there. Yeah, it looks like I might go there and get like a stein of German beer. And
absolutely. It looks the building, the way the architecture, everything is styled after the old German way.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I watched a TV series. It was called Hunting Hitler.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of it. I've never seen it.
I actually listened to that guy talk on Joe Rogan's podcast,
Oh, nice.
which is, oh my goodness. And it was just so
I'll have to look this up.
informative.
Yeah.
And it's weird because these people, because they're in South America and they're kind of segregated from a lot of the world.
Yeah.
I mean, you figure if you're down there, it's not as developed.
You're down near Antarctica, like you are out
and
there.
you're celebrating your heritage. Now, if your dad or your great grandfather or your grandfather was a Nazi
Whoa.
and he went over there,
Yeah.
he wasn't happy that the Nazis had been defeated
Of
in World
course.
War II.
Yeah.
And he was very proud of everything that he had done during the war.
Yeah.
So, like, I grow up very proud of my great grandfather for having fought in World War II,
Right.
not on that side, you know,
Right,
being on the American
right,
side and being
right.
a part of, he was mainly a part of, I believe it was the Italy thing or something.
This is your grandfather?
It was my great grandfather or
Great-grandfather?
great great grandfather, something like that. We have some sort of, on my mom's side, I believe the Tyler history, because there was a bunch of military service members or whatever.
Yeah.
But
My
regardless,
grandfather was in the Korean War, so that's like I have a different,
yeah.
different war, different story. But
yeah. But it was, so with that, they have a pride in it. And there are these towns that are,
do they fly Nazi flags and stuff?
I don't think they fly the Nazi flag because they're not as obvious about it. Like
Yeah.
they understand now in the modern world.
Right.
Now it is connected.
Right.
It's very hard to not be connected and to be able to conduct business, to build a city like that and to be able to live like that, you have to have some connection to the outside world.
Yeah, and probably not fly Nazi flags.
Yeah. And flying Nazi flags, not the best.
Yeah.
But
Bad PR.
that does not keep them from having
Pride.
the jewelry box in the house with all of Grandpa's old Nazi
Wow.
war medals and beaming with pride
That's crazy.
for what he did and what he accomplished. And
Yeah.
you figure growing up in a society that still thinks that way,
Yeah.
there's children who've grown up not knowing any different. Like that's just their point of view.
Yeah, that's crazy. And so now, even more conspiratorial though, right? So they're down there and there was a lot of people, there still are people that think that there was even more occultism involved. Like they were, trying to get to the center of the earth or trying to like,
There's also the moon. Have you heard of the moon theory?
I don't know. Tell me about it. I
Not
love this
well.
stuff.
Okay, so sorry to ruin everybody's view of America right
No,
now,
this
but I'm
is
about
fun.
to destroy
Listen,
your governmental
we-
views.
If you
Um,
watch the previous episodes of the podcast, we haven't even scratched the surface yet. It's going to get much more.
So the moon landing,
Yeah.
you can thank a Nazi.
Oh, okay.
You can thank a Nazi for all of NASA,
Yeah.
our entire space program.
Well, that doesn't surprise me. We brought how many Nazi scientists?
Their
in?
rocket development systems were so far advanced during World War II compared to anybody else around the world. And this is why I believe Hitler escaped. And the reason nobody really cared was because we saw value in Nazis, which,
Right.
say what you will, we found value in them.
Well,
through
initially,
educational
I mean,
purposes, through ways we could make them, work for us, the technology that they had. Yes, they had terrible ideals, but
That wasn't our problem with. I've spoken I've had history professors that they've said, well, that's not. It's great to think like, oh, we saw these Nazis and they were so bad, we thought let's go start a war with them, and that's not.
No,
what
that's not
happened.
what it was at all.
Like we knew about them and we weren't doing.
there were
anything
Nazis
at
in
first.
America. There was a huge Nazi rally held at Madison
I
Square
know.
Garden at one
Yeah,
point.
look
Like,
that up if you've never seen that. A massive yeah. So
Nah.
that wasn't the reason we got in the war in the first place. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, and we recruited like so many. I mean, weren't they kind of? I mean, didn't some of them probably work on like the Manhattan Project with the nuclear bomb and everything too? Because didn't we bring a lot of?
I think they may have had a little bit in that, but if you think about it, the Manhattan Project
too
and all
close
of
to
that
the
was a little
war.
too close to the end.
But we brought a lot of them in. I know that.
Oh yeah, after post World War II,
Yeah.
we brought so many in. And you
crazy.
think about it, we're talking the 1940s, 50s.
Right.
This is before computer proliferation, all of those things. If you are an American and some guy comes up to you and says, "Here's my birth certificate," and it's in German, you've never learned German.
Yeah.
You can barely read German. Okay, it's a German birth certificate. This is your name? Yeah, what's your name? Say it for me. Erickson Smirnov.
Right.
Oh, okay, you're Russian. Oh, yeah, I'm Russian. I'm just passing through. How do you know that that wasn't a high-ranking Nazi official?
Right. Right.
If he's not wearing his suit, if he's wearing rags, you don't read German, and you don't, even if you did read German, how do you know that's an official document or not? You've never seen the official documents of
So
Germany.
you just get people, you don't know who they are. But how do you get these scientists that work on NASA and stuff?
Well, they knew about them because they were high enough. You know what I mean? They were people of notoriety.
So they
did
they bring them in as captives, or they just brought them in like you can
Well,
either be a prisoner or you can come work for us?
I
basically?
think it was I think that's what was set up was, all right, here's the deal. You know, you can, well, that ends, they wanted to flee Germany because you have to realize they invaded Germany. Germany got invaded. Germany got destroyed. It was leveled. That country was a mess. There was nothing there for anybody to go back to. Even the families that were not supportive of the Nazis, but were just existing there, their homes, their industries, a lot of that stuff gone. So of course these people are looking for somewhere to go.
Right.
And if you've got the United States government, I will give you a cushy job as a scientist.
Yeah.
We're just not going to talk about the fact that maybe you were complicit in the murder of millions of Jews. You can have a job.
Right. I mean, yeah.
You're going to go. Now,
You get some of the greatest security analysts and people these days from hackers who do terrible things, and then they're like, "Well, we can either throw you in a pit, or you can come."
Oh yeah, they
fix
flip it.
all
Well,
that.
it's the guy in what's that movie? Catch Me If You Can.
Oh right,
That's exactly what happened to
Right.
him.
Right.
He was a very successful fraudster, and instead of serving years and decades in jail,
Now he's
they
a master
flipped him. Now he works for the
anti-fraud.
government.
Yeah.
Now he's a master of anti. Because who's the best guy to show you how to defend against it? The one who knows how to
one
do
who
it
did
at a
it.
higher level than anybody else.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what happened with them. But there were obviously the ones that wouldn't have escaped that way no matter what. If we had gotten a hold of Hitler and we had actually made an effort to get Hitler, or there was a way that people had gotten Hitler, just look at what happened to Benito Mussolini in Italy.
Yeah.
When they overthrew his fascist government, he was legitimately hung from a gas station naked and beaten like a piñata until he died.
Man.
So seeing that happen, if you're Hitler and you know they're coming,
Yeah.
you know it's coming from both sides. You've got the Americans and the British coming from the east. You've got the Russians, who are much more vicious, coming from the west.
Yeah.
Do you really think, now seeing all of this, now you say what you will, a terrible guy,
Yeah.
but obviously a brilliant person to a certain degree.
Sure.
Evil does not mean stupid,
Right.
as in good does not mean smart.
Right.
Would that guy sit in a bunker
And shoot himself.
and wait until the forces were so, because I mean, it's not like they're moving 60 miles an hour. This is a war. You know, this is moving slowly. They're fighting block for block.
Yeah.
This isn't something that developed over a day or two. This was months, weeks. You're telling me he couldn't have found a way out? He wouldn't have tried to find a way out? The rat lines that all of the Germans got out of, and high-ranking Germans, Dr. Joseph Mengele
Right.
made it to South America.
he
Mengele
really?
is the man who was the head of the really disgusting, terrible experimental medicine stuff.
Right.
He's the one that was injecting dye into the eyes of identical twins. He loved identical twins because he had the perfect test and he had the perfect control because they were identical. So he
Right.
could see what would happen.
Wow. Yeah.
He made it to South America and ended up dying, not only dying of old age, as an old man living out his life, he continued, and the people in South America were complicit in helping him continue his studies.
This is factual.
This is factual.
They know this. Wow.
This is factual. They have
So if he
a
makes
certain
it-
amount of evidence that
Right.
show he was using South American children. He
my
kept doing the same thing, just
crazy.
in South America.
Yeah.
He ended up dying of old age. He was allowed to very publicly was carrying out this way of life, and we never went after him.
That's weird.
What do you think are the chances that a guy like Hitler, who
He shaves that little mustache off.
he
You
shaves
never
that little
see-
mustache
you never-
off,
never
he
see
shaves
from-
his
yeah,
head,
yeah.
changes his hair, or what if he grows a beard?
You never see that dude again.
What if he's in the hills of South America? You never see that dude again.
Yeah.
You never see him again.
Yeah.
Or the next time you see him, he's an old man. He's
Right.
whatever. You won't recognize him.
Right.
And I honestly believe the reason, I 100% believe Hitler was not killed in 1945 or 44, whatever it was that he was supposedly died.
Yeah.
He did not die then. He died later on, decades later, of old age
In South America.
in South America, somewhere. Because if you look at it, not only do we have the documented proof that other Nazis made it to South America and did that exact thing and lived their lives out, there was a special task force founded by the Israeli government in order to hunt down past Nazis because they wanted blood so bad, but we weren't helping them. We weren't going to do the same thing. We weren't as concerned about it because as soon as we defeated fascism, communism,
Yeah.
we
true.
immediately turned our attention to fighting communism.
The Cold War and
Yeah, we pretty
Vietnam
much
and-
jumped from World War II right into the Korean War, into Vietnam.
Yeah.
It's been continued conflict, and
Yeah.
until the end of the Cold War, as soon as World War II ended, we were at the throats of communism. We were stopping the spread of communism. Fascism, we didn't care about anymore. We defeated that regime. There was
crazy.
no threat of Hitler re-rising to power. Fascism is complicit on having a stronghold and never letting go, because as soon as you let go, those people that you treated like crap are going to come kill you.
Right. They're going to rise up. And,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which also is why South America was the perfect place for him. He never did anything to South Americans. Half of them probably didn't even know who the hell he was.
Right. And like you said, you got a lot of indigenous people. You're in far, far South
Mm-hmm.
America. So before we go, we gotta go into the further stuff. So into the occultism and the weird stuff. Like
Yes.
so the rumor that they were trying to what did you hear about Antarctica? Were they trying to establish an underground base? Or what was
So
it?
they were trying to establish, from what I heard, they were trying to establish a base of operation, but there was also, depending on what rumors you go with,
Right.
Why is the magnetic field there?
Right.
What controls that? Now, this is before we had extensively done any sort of research in that area. What's causing that?
Yeah.
Some of them thought, well, scientifically we explain this, but others thought, but what is the thing that's up there that's so powerful?
Yeah.
Plus, if you think about it, having a base in Antarctica, not a terrible thing strategic wise, because depending on the advancement of technology you have, and with their rocket system, if you
Right.
have a base in Antarctica and you have missiles coming up that way, not from Germany, but from that way,
Yeah.
they can get under the radar much easier undetected because they can travel that far. And we weren't expecting anything to travel that far because rocket technology, to our knowledge, wasn't there.
That's crazy.
And it was almost there. I mean, within 1945, World War II ended. We were on the moon by 1969.
Right.
And before that, we were sending things into space.
Yeah.
Takes a lot to get into space. They had the technology of rockets to shoot something from Antarctica and hit the heart of America.
That's crazy. Antarctica's still a mystery too. It's still a weird
Oh, yeah.
place. Like you can't just go there either.
No.
Like you have to go on an expedition. I mean, there's
Because,
crazy-
just traveling there is super dangerous.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
yeah.
not a readily traveled place just because of environment,
Crazy.
but still.
what
yeah.
else were they trying to do?
Well,
What other things have you heard of?
other things that I have heard of, I forget what the bowl is called. There was a bowl or a chalice that they were convinced was the actual Holy Grail.
So this was like the cup of Christ, the
They
Holy
were,
Grail.
yes,
and
they
were really after them.
100%. They were searching artifacts like that.
Isn't that Indiana Jones
it's a
3?
known thing.
Right? The Last Crusade.
I think so.
Weren't the Nazis after that? I mean, that's the one that has the Holy Grail in it.
Yeah, I think that was, yeah.
And they really were.
But yeah, no, that was an absolutely true thing. They were going after things like that because it's tied both, and like we were saying, it's tied both into the occult and the religious side, because why
Yeah.
would they be going after the Holy Grail if they didn't have an understanding of Christianity?
That's crazy.
But what makes it so powerful? Like, they thought there was a power that if they had it in their possession,
Right.
that would make them the rightful heirs to the control of the world.
That's crazy. Do you think they're really going after the Ark of the Covenant too, like in the first Indiana Jones?
Oh, yeah.
Because from the theology side, like they had the Ark of the Covenant in the temple, back in the old days, right?
And as soon as we're done talking about that, I'm about to ruin Indiana Jones for
This
you
is
too.
crazy. But in real life, so thousands of years ago, and the high priests were the only ones that were allowed to go past this curtain back where the ark was, because it was so powerful and you could come face to face with God, to the point where they would wear like ropes or chains around their ankles so that if they died, no one else had to go in. They could just drag these dudes' bodies back out.
Yeah.
Like, it's crazy. So I mean, like,
Well,
the Nazis probably were after things like that too.
and
you know?
think about how powerful they believe those type of things are, even in storyline. Because
Right.
if you look at the plot of Indiana Jones, his existence was actually more detrimental to the world than him going after the Nazis and trying to get the Ark of the Covenant.
Yeah.
He mucked things up because if Indiana Jones hadn't gone after the Ark of the Covenant, what would have happened? They would have found it, they would have opened it, and they still would have died.
Yeah. Yeah.
That had nothing to do with Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
He could have never gone after it. They could have found it 4 months previous, and they all still
Right,
would have died.
right.
Indiana Jones was inconsequential to the
Right.
storyline.
He was just the dude
He was
there,
just
yeah.
the dude, like creating some issues and fighting them. But in the end, ultimately, nothing he did stopped them. It was the Ark of the Covenant that
So they
stopped
really
them.
were on this search for powerful or supposed powerful artifacts.
Oh yeah,
and-
because and back then you also have to look at it in the development of science.
Yeah.
They were looking at the most power, like these guys were thinking on a scale of world domination.
yeah.
In order to dominate the world, you have to have the world's strongest things.
Yeah.
What's going to be stronger? Something supernatural that you can't explain or something man-made?
Right. That's crazy though.
Man-made can only
It just it doesn't.
Yeah.
I mean, when you think about it, like these guys were after these just legendary items and into this.
there was
really
some sort of
strange.
spear. I forget the name of it. There was
The one that
a
pierced Christ's ribs.
Yes,
or-
they were
yeah.
after that. I mean, a lot of it was Christianity based, but I don't know how much of that is just lending to the fact that how Christian Europe is.
Yeah.
So a lot of those artifacts were there. Now, is there something in Native American culture that if they had made it to America and would they have been searching up these great Native American artifacts? How would they have felt about those? We don't know because it never got that far.
Yeah. Wow. What a crazy story.
And it's kind of weird that we're talking about all this on the day that, did you know that right now, as we're recording this, Notre Dame Cathedral is burning?
What?
Yeah. Notre Dame Cathedral caught on fire in Paris today. They were doing renovation projects, like the spire collapsed. The
Oh my goodness. Yeah, it is. 43 minutes ago, roof collapses at Paris Notre Dame Cathedral as massive fire rages.
Yeah. They were trying to do some repairs and stuff, and they're saying it was a construction accident, ignited a fire, and now the entire cathedral's like pretty much done.
Whoa.
So if you've never been to Notre Dame, you may never have ever been to Notre Dame.
Never go there.
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy.
Kind of weird we're talking about this. That's what I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh gosh, we're talking about all this stuff with the Nazis and now a church is burning. I think maybe this is the
Yeah.
wrong day.
That is absolutely crazy. Wow. I'm so glad you came on and we got to talk about Nazis.
Thank you.
I'm sure it's one of those things. Every time we have one of these podcasts into the light, you scratch the surface.
You can't, because I
can't
could go on about this stuff for literally hours.
Yeah.
There's so much, and if I had research materials with me, this could be days long before
The
I'd run
funny
out.
thing is, too, is I feel like we kind of scratched the historical and we just barely even touched all the other stuff.
Well, and this is kind of the point of the podcast, though, because it's
Yeah.
bringing it into the light. We're planting that germ of whatever.
Right.
Go do your research.
Do some research.
Figure it
Look
out yourself.
into it. Look up that show.
Maybe you believe me. Maybe you don't. Go do the research.
What's
See
the
what
show?
you can
Finding
form.
Hitler,
It
right?
was Hunting Hitler, I
Hunting
believe is what it was
Hitler.
called.
Then there's a Netflix documentary, a conspiracy documentary, and I think the first episode is about Nazis and about Hitler's supposed suicide. And I think what's most interesting too is that, like you said earlier, you're like, certain things you don't want to think about either as a person or as an American, but I think you do. You have to think critically. You don't have to be a conspiracy theorist to see that some of these alleged historical events don't make as much sense unless you look at them in different lights, approach it critically and really think about.
And especially with the Nazi thing, like, I don't know if it's so much a cover up as much as willful ignorance on our
Sure,
part with that.
yeah.
Because again, like I said, we were done with the Nazis.
You got what you
We're
wanted.
done. We got what we wanted. They're
Fascism was
done.
Hitler was
They're
dead
not
or gone.
They're not killing anybody. He's gone. He's out of the picture. We've got a
the
bigger
good
threat to worry
scientists.
with. Yeah.
So yeah, well, I think that's happened lots of times, and that could take you into a whole nother thing. But like, it's almost like it reminds me of when they got Bin Laden. They got him in the middle of the night. He's gone. What'd you do with his body? Yeah, we threw it in the ocean. Like maybe they did, maybe they didn't, but that was over. So it's,
Yeah,
you know
like
what I
you
mean?
haven't seen or heard from the guy since. And what's the difference? What if they found him dead? What if he had died a couple years earlier?
What if
Is
they
that-
threw him in a pit somewhere?
Is it really consequential to us? No, he's not there.
Ultimately, I guess not. Right?
Yeah.
But it's interesting to wonder what happened.
Like what the heck? Why
Yeah.
would they? Why would you just dump it in the ocean like that?
Oh, that's a whole
That's a
nother
whole other
podcast.
can of worms,
Matt,
man.
thanks for coming on.
No
Thanks
problem,
for listening
brother.
to Into the Light with Ryan and Matt. Shout out to Michelle as she's down in South America. And thank you to our sponsor, as always, Conspiracy Coffee and Bakery here in Mansfield. We'll be back next time.
If she comes back with a fancy new cup, I'm running.
We'll see you.